All right. Good evenings, ladies and gentlemen. This is Court Rutnowski, publisher of Yankee T News, and this presentation, which I believe is number 47, co-sponsored by the Greenwich Stanford Tea Party Patriots. So it's always a crazy week, but I'm just going to start with something in Connecticut. Here with this Tea Party group, we have a special interest in election integrity, and I can tell you that it continues to be a source of frustration. So here we have an article about this ongoing fight. You may remember a couple of weeks ago I did a piece about these bills that were being entertained for basically making voting, quote, easier. Well, I just want to introduce another term here. A lot of times we talk about election integrity and maybe the concept of ballot integrity. I would like to offer that the better word we should be using is ballot security and election security, because what Denise Merrill and others are getting away with is enabling fraud because they want to make it easier. But the argument is, in making it easier, they're making the voting process less secure. Okay, so here, in this case, this bill was passed in the State House. You had a shocking number of Republicans going along with the idea of expanding the definition for getting an absentee ballot to cover the concept of sickness, right? Yeah. So a 1-hour debate, and the vote was 126 to 16. So that number 16 should be notable because that would be the Freedom Caucus that's in the House, so the real conservatives, the real Republicans, if I may. So you have the people who are pushing this talking about how the language for voting is too restrictive, all right? And there's a debate to be had about the concept of restrictive, right? And again, the issue of privacy and where that falls with respect to security, and then the concept of access. All these things have to be spelled out in a way that makes sense to everybody. Okay, in any event, moving on. Okay, the Ukraine. Out of all the things that are going on in the Ukraine, I ended up just picking out two things here. I'm going to go with this title. I think you have people suggesting that Putin and Russia is losing the war, or that we're in a stalemate, and you have a small group of people suggesting that Russia's really winning, okay? The thing that should serve as a tell here is the way they're putting more effort into bombing civilians and non-military targets, okay? This is kind of like saying we can't fight the fighters, so we're going to go after the weak, vulnerable people. That's a bad sign. And in further support of that is the second piece, if I may read it. Putin deports Ukrainians to camps. In other words, they're taking Ukrainians and they're sending them to camps in Siberia, according to this. Well, I don't know who wrote, Daily Mail, it's a British publication. The word deports is kind of odd, okay? If it's your country and there are people there and you don't want them there, you deport them. But they're in Ukraine, a sovereign country. You don't deport people in a sovereign country. So instead, what is happening is that Putin is taking hostages. Thousands of Ukrainian hostages. So could it be, if I may submit, that Putin feels he's in such a weak position that he knows he's going to have to negotiate and he's going to use these people as a bargaining chip? You know, I have not been really that severe a critic beyond the obvious about what Russia is doing. But if they're kidnapping and taking hostage Ukrainians, you know what? That's worse than low. And yeah, I think every bad thing that I can think of should happen to you. You heard it here. So there are a lot of other things to talk about, but I think this is at the heart of what's going on right now. So moving on, number 3. Going down to Georgia because I want to go find me some more ballot fraud. That's right. You know, for people who've been following what happened in the 2020 election, you know, it's so obvious it isn't even worth talking about. But now here you have a group in Georgia getting ready to do a probe on ballot harvesting practices in Georgia, okay? So I'll just read one part here, okay? This person described a network of non-governmental organizations that work together to facilitate a ballot trafficking scheme in Georgia, okay? And it just gets worse from there. And so like many other people, I would want to pound the table, I would want to scream. You got to be serious. But here we are, anyway. So I'm hoping something will come out of this, and it's just astonishing. And you have all the bad actors, Raffensperger and others, trying to act like they're on the good side in this, and it's just a sick joke. Anyway, okay, number 4, Wednesday, March 23rd, for all you people, myself included, who feel strongly about the right to life, there's going to be a rally in Hartford, and it's going to be at the Capitol starting at noon. So we have the link posted for it. The national group is helping to coordinate it, so you want to be in on that. As a quick aside here, okay, certainly one of the most disturbing things concerning the COVID so-called vaccine has been how there's been this incredible emphasis on having children jabbed with this so-called vaccine. We're still puzzled at how they've ignored all this information. So let me, this article, I'll just read the title, The Medical Establishment's Willful Blindness About Vaccines in Children. So the bottom line is the fact that all the evidence shows that the people least likely to come down with this, with COVID are these children, yet they insist on vaccinating them. It makes no sense. So you have then, in addition, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, the head of the CDC, who has gone invisible, we don't know where she is, issuing a statement that they had what they called a coding error, in which they overstated the number of children who had died from COVID by 40,000. Okay, all right, so rather than admit they're lying, rather than admit that they were manipulating the data, they're going to call it a coding error. How nice. So I want to remind you, Dr. Naomi Wolf, dailyclout.io, we'll make sure we have it up there. They are doing the work on the 55,000 pages of documents that were released by Pfizer. They've got, I think it's 1,500 people helping out right now, but there's still a lot more help needed. But she made the point that they went through these documents and they could see that there's manipulation of the data, all right? Where's the justice? All I can do is report what's being said. You know, if I was a judge, I'd do a lot more. Okay, this piece, The Architects of Our Present Disaster, is more or less a critique of how America seems to be in decline. I actually don't feel that way. I think, given that Trump would come back, I think you'd see this nation bounce back faster than anything you'd ever expect. That's right. That's right. So, yes, but there's one passage from this article I just want to read that I think summarizes the fact that America has really done a lousy job when it comes to foreign policy. And if I could just take a moment, where did it go? Okay, it was a very good metaphor. So, I mean, the sense is you just look at all these bad things that have been done, one after another, and every one of them hurt our standing in the international community. All of them. Anyway, so here, I'll just read this. The aggressive actions of a normal country are like those of a wolf. It kills to eat. The aggression serves the material interests of the country in some way. But American foreign policy is like a big, dumb dog. It catches a rabbit for fun, kills it in the process, and then loses interest and comes back inside to eat kibble. And I don't know, when we read about Afghanistan, when we read about Iraq and other places, there seems to be a certain truth to that. All right, meantime, I'm not quite sure how to react to this, but it kind of pisses me off, okay? Here's the topic. The unions have decided that they want to take more money from the billionaires in Connecticut. And the argument, and they want to use it for, that's right, equity. Since when did unions get interested in equity, which is a big phony issue? So yeah, so the heart of the issue is that the 12 billionaires that they're looking at collectively have assets of around $59 billion, and because of COVID, they made over 15 billion more. And so they're looking at that like a form of windfall profit, and they want to take money from them for that. I think this is a terrible idea. You've already driven a lot of wealthy people out of the state, and guess what happens when you drive wealthy people out of the state? Who's stuck paying the tax bill? The not so wealthy people. So you union guys are real loons. All right. Yes, in my humble opinion, you heard it here first, we're heading into a recession. Yes. Now, what I find interesting is that there are business models that are sort of like the typical expectations about all the events that actually lead up to a recession. One of which is where they talk about you have the bond market, right? You have the stock market and you have the bond market. So you have people buying and selling bonds all day long. And one of the things they worry about is the interest rate on these bonds. The interest rates there's the 2-year, the 5-year, the 10-year, and the 20-year, and then there's some others. But they look at the relationship between the 2-year and the 10-year in particular. And when the interest rates start to narrow, and what they call flatten, and then what can happen is all of a sudden the 2-year trades at a higher interest rate than the 10-year, then you have an inversion in the curve, and that inversion many times predicts a recession. Well, guess what? The yield curve is flattening, and you have other people suggesting that we're going to have a recession come the third quarter. So it's called Don't Be Surprised. All right, moving on. Connecticut Commie of the Week. Yes, our friend right here, Edwin Vargas Jr., right? He's our latest addition. So he too is a state representative up in Hartford, okay? And he too has been very active with the Connecticut Communists. He has served on their committees, such as the Amistad Award Committee. And he has a long history as a Democrat socialist, which we know as kissing cousins to communists. And he is just one more problematic character. Somewhere, I'm going to have to do a roundup on this, okay? This is probably the 7th or 8th highly placed government official who has affiliations with the Communist Party in Connecticut that I've come across. It's sickening. But there it is. So we'll get into that later. And then the last thing I just wanted to talk about quickly is, once again, the unions. Oh, yes. So, as the title suggests, unions, at least these Connecticut unions, love masks and they love COVID fear. So here we have the mandates haven't been dropped by the federal government and by the state and other places around the country, but you do have some holdouts. And California has to be the worst example. So you've had the UTLA and SEIU Local 99, who have been pushing to keep kids masked. And it's also going on in New York City, as we know. And it's like, where are these people going to, I mean, what madness possesses them? That's my question. How out of touch do they have to be? So it's just one more problem. All right, well, guys, thank you. And I will be seeing you later. We're about to have an interview with Dominic, right? Thanks. Okay. All right. All right.